He only bumped the handlebar, a soft graze, on his way past the row of parked motorcycles. But the biker didn't see an accident. He saw an old man in a faded jacket and decided that was enough reason to strike. One loud crack, and an 84-year-old veteran collapsed to the pavement, hand still gripping the bread he just bought. The bar crowd stared. Phones stayed in pockets. Not one soul stepped forward. But 30 minutes later, the silence shattered. The sky pulsed with blades as a Black Hawk descended onto Main Street. Soldiers in tactical gear spilled out like a storm was coming, because that wasn't just any old man, that was someone's father, and someone's unit was watching. Most people passed by Walter Briggs without a second glance, just an old man, in worn boots, shuffling past the same bar he'd walked by every Thursday for the past 12 years. Retired Army mechanic, 3 deployments, 2 citations, one body that didn't work the way it used to. He didn't complain, didn't ask for honor or pity, just a quiet seat at the diner, a hot coffee, and time to walk home with the help of his cane. That morning was colder than most. Walter wore his old olive army jacket, issue from 1983, patched in the sleeves but still warm. On his left chest, the faded imprint of a name tag that once read W.B. Briggs. He stepped out of the corner deli with a small paper bag tucked under one arm, bread, cough drops, and a postcard he meant to send to his grandson at the academy. Across the street, a group of bikers gathered outside a bar, loud laughing, leaning, on chrome machines polished like trophies. Walter paid them no mind. He didn't fear noise. He'd seen worse sounds in places where silence meant death. As he made his way past the bikes, his coat barely caught a handlebar. The motorcycle rocked, but didn't fall. Walter stopped immediately, turned around, hands up. "Didn't mean to touch it, son." "My jacket's thicker than I thought," he said with a small, apologetic smile. He wasn't mocking. He wasn't careless. He was just old and kind. The tallest biker stepped forward, sunglasses glinting in the noon sun. He didn't ask questions, didn't check the bike. He slapped Walter across the face. The sound echoed off the brick walls. Walter hit the sidewalk with a grunt, one hand still clutching the paper bag as it tore. Bread rolled into the gutter. Laughter from the bar didn't stop. No one moved. Someone sipped a drink and turned their chair. Walter didn't cry out. He sat up slowly, one knee trembling, face flushed with more humiliation than pain, and began picking up pieces of bread from the street. His cheek burned, but he didn't reach for it. Instead, he reached for the crumpled loaf, now speckled with dust and motor oil, and placed it gently back into the torn bag. Like it still mattered. People kept walking. A couple crossed the street to avoid looking. A waitress peered through the diner window, then turned back to her table. The biker who hit him was already laughing again. No apology, no fear. Just the certainty that no one would challenge him over a quiet old man in a faded jacket. Walter stood slowly, gripping a metal pole beside the bus bench for balance. His cane had rolled a few feet away. He limped to retrieve it, bent down with a soft groan and winced, not from pain, but from the weight of being seen and ignored. He sat on the bench and exhaled shakily, the cold air biting the inside of his lungs. His hearing aid buzzed faintly. His pride buzzed louder. Back in 1970, he'd pulled 3 soldiers out of a burning Jeep outside Hughes City. Now in 2025, he couldn't get a stranger to hand him a paper towel for the blood at the corner of his mouth. A teenager walked by, earbuds in. Walter raised a hand, just slightly, but the boy didn't see, or maybe didn't want to. He wasn't looking for sympathy. He was looking for proof he still existed. Inside the bar, the biker lit a cigarette and bragged. Should have watched where he was going. Damn, Grandpa walked right into it. Walter's jaw tightened. He'd been called many things: soldier, husband, dad, sergeant, but worthless had never made the list. Still, he said nothing. just adjusted his jacket, wiped his lip with the corner of his sleeve, and reached into his pocket. Inside was a cell phone, not much more than buttons and a cracked screen. On it, one contact. Eagle 6, emergency only. He tapped it once, then leaned back and waited. 15 minutes passed. Walter didn't move, didn't look angry, didn't look scared, just sat upright, quiet, like he was waiting for a bus no one else could see. Then came the low, distant drum, a faint vibration in the pavement. A few diners looked around. Someone stepped outside the bar, squinting at the horizon. The sound thickened, a deep, rhythmic pulse that made glasses on tables tremble. The bartender stepped outside. "That's not a truck," he muttered. And it wasn't. From beyond, the tree line, emerging like thunder on wings, came the unmistakable silhouette of a Black Hawk helicopter. Low, fast, and headed straight for downtown. Phones came out. Shoppers froze. Dogs barked. Within 60 seconds, the Black Hawk descended into the empty field behind the row of shops. A second later, a matte black SUV pulled up from the opposite direction and screeched to a halt outside the bar. Doors opened in unison. Boots hit pavement. Not one man raised his voice. A dozen figures in tactical gear stepped out, eyes scanning, movement precise, like they'd done this 1,000 times, and never once got it wrong. Out of the helicopter, one man stepped forward. No sunglasses, no swagger, just command in every line of his posture. He was younger than Walter, but not by much. Early 50s, maybe. Broad-shouldered, jaw set, eyes like steel. He walked straight to the bench. Walter looked up, blinked once, and nodded. The man didn't salute. He knelt. "Dad," he said quietly, brushing dried blood from Walter's cheek. "I got here as fast as I could." Walter didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, the biker, still smug, still standing by his friends, turned toward the growing silence. And he saw the men, saw the patch on the lead man's shoulder, U.S. Army Special Operations Commander Briggs. Then finally, he realized, he had slapped the wrong man. The street was silent. The biker stood frozen, leather vest creaking slightly. His smirk evaporated like steam off asphalt. Commander Briggs rose slowly, hands steady at his sides. He didn't draw a weapon, didn't clench a fist. He just looked. Behind him, his men fanned out, wordlessly forming a semicircle that closed off the entire block. No weapons in sight, just the kind of presence that made your spine straighten, by instinct. Walter, still seated, lowered his head, not in submission, but in quiet acknowledgement. Inside the bar, music had stopped. Someone peeked through the blinds. A waitress ducked behind the counter, phone forgotten in her hand. The thigh. Biker took a step back as Commander Briggs stepped forward, voice low but clear. "Which one of you struck a veteran?" No one answered, not at first. Then the biker stepped forward, barely, arms raised, half in mock defense. "Man, it was just some old guy. He bumped my ride." Briggs didn't blink, didn't flinch. "That old man served this country while you were still learning how to spell your own name." A ripple passed through the onlookers. Someone recording whispered, "Oh, damn." The biker scoffed, clinging to bravado. "You military types think you can just roll in like you own the place." Briggs took one step forward, just one, but it erased the distance between patience and consequence. "I didn't come here to threaten anyone," he said, calm as a loaded gun. "I came here because my father bled on a sidewalk while cowards laughed." He turned, raised one finger. A soldier nodded and stepped back, speaking into a radio clipped to his vest. 2 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. No sirens, no lights, just cold and silent. This time, the cops didn't look bored. They looked cautious. Briggs didn't explain. He just pointed at the biker. The cuffs clicked shut, not in rage, but in quiet resolution. The biker didn't resist. There was no point. The moment the cuffs locked, his confidence dissolved like cheap ink in the rain. As the officers led him toward the cruiser, a strange stillness fell over the block. People began emerging from doorways and windows as if waking from a spell. Walter still sat on the bench, hands resting on his cane, expression unreadable. Commander Briggs returned, crouching to eye level. "You okay?" Walter nodded faintly and offered something almost like a smile. "I've had worse," he muttered. Then, after a pause, added, "Just not in front of so many people who did nothing." The line hung in the air. A woman with gray-streaked hair stepped forward, eyes lowered, offering a clean handkerchief. I should have said something, I'm sorry." Walter took it gently and nodded. Then it began. A young man by the coffee shop removed his baseball. A father lifted his child onto his shoulders and whispered something. A boy, no older than 10, stood ramrod straight and saluted, clumsy but earnest. Phones were lowered, hands extended. No one shouted, no one cheered. It wasn't a spectacle. It was respect, long overdue. An older man stepped forward, standing at attention in a weathered flannel, a retired sailor. Another joined him. Former Air Force. One by one, a small line of veterans formed along the sidewalk, shoulder to shoulder. Briggs stepped back and let it happen. His team didn't move. They watched silently, knowing the moment wasn't about them. Walter sat a little, taller, not out of pride but relief, as if something heavy had finally been lifted after years of quiet weight. This wasn't about a slap anymore. It was about every time he'd been overlooked, underestimated, or forgotten, and now, finally, seen. By evening, the video had spread. Across the internet, the slap, the silence, the Black Hawk, the arrest, no music, no edits, just raw footage that didn't need dramatizing. The title read, "Respect the Elder, Walter Briggs, Quiet Strength." Within hours, local news picked it up. By morning, it was on national broadcasts. But they didn't just report the incident. They told his story. Sergeant Walter Briggs, Army mechanic, Gulf War, Kosovo, 3 Bronze Stars, 1 Purple Heart, and until yesterday, completely invisible. The bar issued a half-hearted statement, an unfortunate incident not representative of our values. But people remembered. The laughter, the turned backs, the closed doors, and they weren't forgiving it. The mayor called Walter's son, asked if the city could honor his father with a community event. Briggs answered plainly, "If it's for him, not for press, he'll show up." A week later, the town green had been transformed. A stage, rows of folding chairs, a middle school chorus rehearsing the national anthem. Walter arrived in a wheelchair, not because he couldn't walk, but because someone finally offered to push him, and he let them. The crowd rose as one, not out of obligation, but something heavier, a recognition that dignity, when restored, becomes contagious. The mayor spoke, but what people remembered was the voice of Walter's son. Commander Briggs stepped to the mic and paused. "My father didn't raise his voice. He didn't fight back. He didn't need to. His life spoke louder than fists ever could." He turned to his father, eyes glassy. "You taught me what strength looks like, and now the world knows it too." Walter didn't speak. He just raised one hand, firm, slow, deliberate. The ovation lasted nearly 4 minutes, not for medals, not for revenge, but for every quiet act of service no one had ever clapped for until now. A few days later, Walter received an unexpected letter. Handwritten, shaky, no return address. Just 6 words. "If you'll meet me, I'll listen." It came from the biker. At first, Walter didn't respond. He had every right to ignore it. No one would have blamed him. But something in the way the letter was written, uneven lines, ink smudged, reminded him of another broken man from long ago. One of his own. Haunted, angry, but not beyond reach. He asked his son to arrange a short meeting before the bikers. Court hearing. In a quiet courthouse room with no cameras and no uniforms, the man who once slapped him sat hunched forward. Leather vest gone, plain button-up shirt, hands clenched. Walter entered slowly. Didn't speak at first. Just sat across from him with a calm that could silence a room. "I didn't know who you were," the biker muttered. "That's the problem," Walter said gently. "You didn't care." The man swallowed hard. "My dad was a soldier too. Vietnam. Came back shattered. I grew up hating uniforms. Thought they took him from me." Walter nodded. "I knew men like him. Lost just as much as they brought home. No lecture, no punishment, just a quiet space where truth stood straighter than pride. The biker, his name was Kyle, wiped his face and slid a folded paper across the table. "Judge's orders or not. I'm starting therapy. Signed up to volunteer at the VA downtown. I want to earn something back." Walter looked at the form, then at the man who'd once knocked him down. He reached out, laid a weathered hand over Kyle's. "You won't earn it fast, but every day you show up, you'll get closer." Kyle nodded. Tears ran freely. That meeting would never make headlines. But it changed 2 lives. 6 months later, the corner of Broad Street and Ellison Avenue looked different. Where once there had been silence, now stood a bronze plaque on a polished stone wall. It read, "In honor of Sergeant Walter Briggs, a quiet shield between us and chaos." Beneath it, etched deeper, "He never asked to be seen." He simply stood. People paused now when they passed. Not everyone, not every time. But enough. Students left flowers on Veterans Day. A mural appeared, Walter's silhouette among community heroes. The city council renamed the park behind the bar Briggs Field. Walter still visited on Thursdays. Same boots, same jacket, same slow walk. But now someone always waved first. A teenager on a skateboard, a new recruit, a father pointing him out to his child, not as a legend, but as an example. Kyle, the man who once struck him, now drove veterans to and from the VA twice a week. No uniform, but his actions began to fit like one. Sometimes Walter saw him at the diner, helping a frail vet into a booth or carrying groceries. They never made a show of it. Just exchanged nods. Warriors on different ends of the road, walking it in the same direction now. Commander. Briggs returned only once after the ceremony. He and Walter sat on the same bench. Not much needed to be said. After a while, his son murmured, "You taught them something, Dad. You changed this place." Walter smiled faintly, watching a boy tie a flag to his bike. Maybe, or maybe, they just remembered what mattered. That night, as wind rolled, through the trees near the bar, the sound of distant rotors seemed to return, not from the sky, from memory. And if you stood still long enough, you could almost hear it. The moment a town stood still, because one man refused to fall alone. If you believe respect shouldn't come after pain, if you believe some uniforms never really come off, hit like type honor in the comments and subscribe to Silent Valor Stories. Because the quiet ones, they're the ones who move the world.